I-37 today, 26 at O'Hare. Next news at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So there's a lot of ink being spilled about Madigan's future right now. A question about whether or not he'll retain his speakership. He has short of the 60 votes he needs to be reelected Speaker of the House, but he also is the leader in the clubhouse in terms of plurality, getting 51 votes in an internal vote that was taken among the House Democrat caucus. He got 51. The next closest competitor, Ann Williams, with 18. So we'll see if there's some sort of compromise candidate or there's a default to Madigan. The question is replacing Madigan with an Ann Williams or somebody else, one of the fungible members of the House Democrat caucus. Does that matter any more than it mattered to replace John Cullerton with Don Harmon on the Senate side?
No big difference there.
We'll start there with Ted Dabrowski, who is the president of Wirepoints Inc., wirepoints.org. That's a site that you want to check out for great analytical content on all things Illinois finance and really politics and policy related, the intersection of the two. Ted, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Amy.
So my question, Madigan for candidate to be named later, any different than replacing Cullerton with Harmon?
On the one hand, of course, Madigan's been there for so long that he runs the machine so well. It's so well oiled, and that's why they've been so successful holding power the way they have. So getting rid of Madigan, will matter. But I think what we've tried to point out is that the machine he's built is so powerful that whoever takes over, could be worse because they get to take over the machine he's built and do even more extreme things. Madigan is a centrist compared to a lot of the people that might take over. So, you could see things get worse because they'll just get to step into the machine, take over the wheel, and make things worse.
Well, that's it. That's sort of where I'm intimating, at least in part. I mean, I take the points you're making and others have made to heart, but what you'll do is, yes, you'll have a less powerful Speaker of the House and a more powerful constituency for that Speaker of the House, starting with the public sector union. So all you're doing is ultimately is transferring power away from the Speaker's chair to the public sector unions. And I don't know if anybody's taken a look at how the public sector unions in Illinois behave recently, but they are, number one, not just sort of left of Madigan ideologically, but they get their bread buttered by maintaining the status quo, and we've seen how it's played out with the Chicago teachers, and we've seen how it's played out previously with the service employees as well as AFSCME. I mean, if you think that will change the trajectory of Illinois, that redistribution of power towards the public sector unions, then you don't understand anything about Illinois.
Well, that's right, and you don't even have to wait until the next General Assembly. Just look at what's happening now. I look at this like the shiny object. We're all looking at what's happening with Madigan, but it's amazing what's being passed right now, the laws that are being passed, or I should say the bills that are being passed, and they'll go to Pritzker. In this time period, they've given Chicago Teachers Union more bargaining power under new law. So, here's CTU that struck 3 times in a row in the last decade, won't go back to school, and yet lawmakers just gave them more bargaining power, and it might, if it has immediate effect, they won't even go back to school. So that's number one. Number two, they just gave firefighters, if you know anything about Chicago pensions, they're broke. And if you know anything about the firefighters' pension fund, it's among the most broke in the country. And yet these lawmakers just increased COLAs to the firefighters. And number three, they pushed more money into education for social justice. So, yeah, what you just said, Dan, is precisely right. It's just that we don't even have to wait for Madigan to be changed. It's happening as we speak because it's a free-for-all right now under the new environment we're in.
Well, Ted, what's the chances that Governor Pritzker won't sign this bill when it comes to the CTU having more power, determining class size, length of day, and the school year length?
Well, the thing is, there's no way that Pritzker doesn't sign this. This is right in his alley. CTU's been able to strike anyway, regardless of whether they've had these powers or not. But this just gives them even more power because now they can say, hey, I don't want to come in for COVID because of COVID into classes, and that's one of the big reasons they're pushing for this. They don't want to come back to school. It's crazy, but that's the power that the legislature's just given the CTU.
Well, they had 2 strikes yesterday, one outside Dawes Elementary, and are they going to get fired? I mean, Janice Jackson said that if they don't show up for work again today, then they're not going to get paid. That's different than getting fired. Yeah,
it's hard to see how she would go through with that. I like the fact that she's actually threatened that because that's how it should be. We've talked a lot about COVID and kids needing to be in school, but if they were fired, that would be a huge move. But it's not going to happen. I don't think there's enough political will there to make that happen.
House, we've talked about some of the other legislation pending, particularly with respect to changing the way policing works in Illinois. But also this, House Bill 2685, Senate floor amendment. The bill maintains the state's contracting goals for minorities, women, and persons with disabilities for construction contracts at 20%. However, it would amend that act to require the state to award state contracts, including construction contracts, but not limited to descendants of African slavery proportionate to the state's population. So this is a reparations play. The proposal also creates the Commission on Equity and Inclusion and gives the Commission power to approve procurements, propose procurement rules, recommend contract cancellations, participate in the approval of procurement officers. Also this, forbids employers from using arrests that didn't lead to convictions in hiring, firing, and promotion, creates additional housing rights for those with criminal records, requires state agencies to publish race and gender wage reports, creates an African Descent Citizens Reparations Commission. Again, all the focus on who is going to be the titular head of the Democrat Socialist Party, who's going to command the speaker's gavel. Meanwhile, below the surface, you have all these parallel tracks that have been laid down to make communities less safe through the policing changes, to make Illinois less financially solvent through the SOPs to the public sector unions, and to further make Illinois hostile to business through all of these identitarian mandates on business, not just construction either.
Well, I think this is kind of hitting at the heart of what's happening in Chicago and the state largely, especially through these changes, is that we're no longer going to look at competence or merit as the reason for somebody to have a contract or somebody to gain employment or for how we do anything. We seem to be in every document you see and a lot of the laws that you're seeing, it's something about through the lens of equity or through the lens of systemic racism. And so it's going to make it very difficult to judge anything anymore because it's no longer based on, like I said, merit or competence. And it's just giving more and more power to different groups. And I think it's just going to make a mess of Illinois. And it's going to be really hard to unwind because it's becoming so embedded in all these different contracts, clauses, and it's going to be difficult for us to compete as a state against other states that are competing on job creation, investment. It's going to be tough.
Support bailouts, really, for state and local governments. This is something that's on the wish list of both Mayor Lightfoot and Governor Pritzker. The happy day when Joe Biden won the presidential election, so that means they're going to get aid, relief is how they characterize it from the federal government, they think. And then people suggest, the way people understand these things, bailout, so the federal government's going to come and bail them out. Is there any amount of money that's realistic that could come from the federal government to Chicago and Illinois that would make a material difference in the state of the city and state's financial affairs?
No, there's not. But Dan, that's not really the right question. The question is it enough just to perpetuate what they're doing for another year, 2 years, or 3 years? And that's the game, right? It's never about fixing the problem. It's only about keeping things going and keeping your power, at least while you're in. If you look at it's interesting. If you look at the new law that where the CTU would get more bargaining power, Lori Lightfoot says she supports it as long as it starts. Guess what? After her term,
2024.
Right. So it's beautiful,
after
right?
That contract. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the way it's working, and I think what's fascinating about this whole thing going on right now is, we've been suffering under COVID, and you've heard every single reason why we should have lockdowns or schools should be closed and all that. So here the legislature comes in. There's been 10 months of executive order by Pritzker, and there's not been one word or any effort to strip him of those executive order privileges and to take over by the legislature what's happening in the state. Nor has there been anything to talk about creating more jobs, getting businesses back open, getting schools back open. Nothing about that, and that's what everybody's suffering under. So they've skipped all that, and they've gone over to the extreme stuff that they're talking about. And meanwhile, everybody's left hanging. But like you say, it's all because I think they're just saying, hey, we're going to get several billion from the federal government. Let's just do what we can while we can, and there's nothing to stop us now.
And same with the vaccines. I mean, Pritzker said, well, we'll have mass vaccinations, where people will line up to go to their Soldier Field or McCormick Place only after Biden is president. And it's like, why don't we do it now? Why don't we do what they're doing in Florida right now? Because we have some vaccines that are sitting on shelves. Well, not in shelves, but in refrigerators or freezers.
Well, I think it just comes back to nothing makes sense in Illinois right now. There's no laws that make sense. No actions make sense. Everything is politically motivated or has nothing to do, again, with competence. It has all to do with identity politics, and so therefore we can't figure out what should happen. And I think Illinois is I think a microcosm of what's happening at the national level. We're just way ahead of it, and money doesn't matter at the federal level anymore. You got the modern monetary theory versus the good old days of fiscal conservatism. So,
but there's no opposition. Too. I mean, there's no organized opposition, and so they just have the run of the place. I mean, even relative to New York and California, I would suggest there's less organized opposition here. At least in California, you have a recall petition afoot with 1 million signatures. In New York, you have Andrew Cuomo feeling the political pressure to do basically a 180 during his State of the State address yesterday and opening the economy. Here, the closest thing you have is Rick Bayless penning a letter to the mayor and city council and by extension the governor asking for scraps. I mean, his letter is so instructive of the serf mentality in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. Just let us open 20 to 25%. We promise we'll be safe. Restaurants. There is no sort of overarching principled demand being made of anybody in a real position of authority, and the handful of Republicans milling about with to no particular consequence are as irrelevant as most of the members of the Chicago City Council.
Well, you're absolutely right, and there's been I talked about this recently. There is no plan. Obviously, the Democrats don't have a plan, or their plan is just to increase everything they're doing by several fold. But I think on the opposition side, nobody's put together a plan that says some principled objectives. Here's what we want, and so nobody's got anything to look at as an alternative. So there's no opposition, as you say, and that's the sad part. People need to start putting together leadership of the Republican Party and others need to start putting a plan together that says here's what we stand for, here's what we want to do, and if you give us a chance, here's what we will do. But
in lieu of a big plan, what do you have? You have a bunch of little plans, and the little plans are individual families' plans to get out of Illinois, which continues unabated. Illinois continuing to lead the nation in out-migration.
Well, that's precisely right, and I was going to say that's precisely why people just leave. That's the only alternative. There's no recall, so you just leave, and people shrug their shoulders every day. I don't know if people do it. Okay, a lot of people do purposely leave. They're tired of the combination of there's not enough good jobs, the governments are too corrupt, and it's just too expensive to live here. That's why they leave. But others just say, hey, look at the opportunities right over the border in Indiana or Wisconsin or Florida or Texas. And I talked about Even the blacks are leaving because they see places like Atlanta and Houston as friendly to their entrepreneurship and ability to do more. So that's really the political vote in Illinois is just to leave, and that's the sad part.
He is Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints Inc. That's at wirepoints.com. Get all of their content on a daily basis, breaking out the economic picture, the policy implications of everything happening in Chicago and Illinois. It's good reading. Ted, thanks for joining us as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
If you're drowning in IRS debt and can't afford to pay, then you need to take advantage of special IRS tax programs that are available and free yourself from IRS collection efforts once and for all. Due to the financial hardship consumers are facing throughout the country, the Internal Revenue Service has made it easier to settle delinquent tax problems. An open phone line has been established by Community Tax for consumers to call and see if they qualify. Take down this number or store it in your cell phone, but call the Community Tax Helpline at 800-500-5588. If you owe back taxes to the IRS and cannot afford to pay them back, or even if you have years of unfiled tax returns, there's no need to fear anymore. But you have to call the Community Tax Helpline today at 800-500-5588 for the help that you need. Don't take on the IRS alone. They can attack your wages, savings, pension, home, and even your Social Security check. Call 800-500-5588 for your free consultation and to see if you qualify. That's 800-500-5588.
Guys, I want to encourage you to make your health a priority this new year. It's easier than you think at Low T Center. They're reinventing the doctor's visit, making it quick and easy to get all of your levels checked, not just your testosterone. They offer a comprehensive health assessment so you know all your numbers. If you've been feeling tired, grumpy, have lack of motivation and drive, noticed weight gain and loss of muscle mass, these could all be signs of low testosterone, low thyroid, or even sleep apnea. Low T Center will help determine the cause of your symptoms and help you get back to feeling your best. It all starts with their quick and easy health assessment covered by most health insurance. And they now offer monitored self-inject at-home testosterone treatments, providing convenience, and additional health monitoring measures for your safety, including a take-home blood pressure monitoring cuff. Self-inject at-home treatment